What happened when you recorded your father without them knowing? The screaming started at 7:43 a.m. on December 18th, exactly 12 minutes after I'd gotten home from my first semester at State. I was still dragging my duffel bag up the stairs when Dad's voice exploded from the kitchen like a grenade going off. You worthless little shit. Can't even pour cereal without making a goddamn mess. I froze on the landing. Through the thin walls of our split-level house, I could hear my 10-year-old brother Marcus crying, those hiccuping sobs that meant he was trying to hold it in but couldn't. Mom's voice came next, barely audible. Please, David, he's just tired. Don't you dare defend him. This is exactly why these kids are so goddamn useless, because you coddle them like babies. My stomach dropped. It had been 4 months since I'd lived here full-time, and I'd somehow convinced myself that maybe things had gotten better. That maybe Dad's anger had cooled down after I left for college. That maybe the family therapy Mom had mentioned during our brief phone calls was actually working. I was an idiot. Look at this kitchen. Milk everywhere, cereal on the floor, you live like animals when I'm not watching. Dad's voice had that particular edge that meant he was just getting started. Marcus, get over here and clean this up. Now. I'm sorry. Marcus kept repeating, his voice getting smaller with each word. I dropped my bag and crept down the hallway toward the kitchen, staying just out of sight around the corner. Through the archway, I could see Dad looming over Marcus, who was on his hands and knees frantically wiping up spilled Cheerios with paper towels. Mom stood by the sink, her shoulders rigid, gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. You're sorry. Dad's laugh was sharp and cruel. Sorry doesn't fix anything, you little moron. Sorry doesn't teach you to stop being such a clumsy waste of space. That's when I saw Emma. My 12-year-old sister was pressed against the refrigerator, still in her pajamas, watching everything with those wide, terrified eyes I remembered too well. The same expression I used to wear during Dad's explosions before I got big enough to fight back, before I learned to make myself invisible. And you. Dad wheeled around to face Mom. This is your fault. You let them get away with everything while I'm working 60-hour weeks to keep this family afloat. I come home to chaos because you can't maintain basic discipline. David, please lower your voice. The neighbors. Fuck the neighbors. I'll yell in my own house if I want to. A cabinet door slammed so hard I was surprised the hinges held. You know what your problem is, Linda. You're weak. Pathetically weak. Just like your mother was. I watched Mom's face crumple at that. Dad knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. He'd been perfecting these attacks for 18 years. Marcus was still on the floor, shoulders shaking, trying to pick up individual Cheerios with trembling fingers. Emma hadn't moved from the refrigerator. And Mom just stood there, taking it all, like she always did. Something crystallized in my chest, not anger, exactly, but something colder. More calculated. I pulled out my phone, swiped to the voice recorder app, and hit record. It was 7:51 a.m. when I decided to destroy my father's life. The recording ran for 17 minutes and 34 seconds. 17 minutes of Dad systematically tearing apart a 10-year-old's self-worth over spilled cereal. By the time his voice finally dropped to a normal volume, my phone's storage showed the file was 23.7 megabytes of pure, unfiltered evidence. There, Dad said, his tone suddenly casual as Marcus finished cleaning. See how easy that was? All it takes is a little discipline. He ruffled Marcus's hair like they just shared a bonding moment instead of psychological warfare. Now get ready for school. And next time, maybe you'll think before you make a mess. Marcus nodded frantically and bolted upstairs, Emma closed behind him. Mom began wiping down the already clean counter with mechanical precision, her face blank. Dad poured himself coffee, humming under his breath like nothing had happened. This was the part that always fucked with my head the most, the instant transformation. Dr. Jekyll putting away Mr. Hyde's costume until the next performance. I crept back upstairs and found Marcus in the bathroom, splashing cold water on his red-splotched face. Emma stood next to him, rubbing his back in small circles. Hey, I said quietly from the doorway. They both jumped. Emma's face flooded with relief when she saw me. Jake. When did you get home? Just now. I knelt down to Marcus's level. You okay, buddy? He nodded too quickly. I'm fine. Dad's right, I was being clumsy. I need to be more careful. My heart clenched. He was already internalizing it, already making Dad's abuse his fault. Just like Emma and I had done. Just like Mom still did. Marcus, listen to me. Spilling cereal doesn't make you worthless, okay? Everyone spills things. I spilled an entire pizza on my dorm floor last week. But Dad said. Dad was wrong. The words came out harder than I intended. Both kids stared at me with wide eyes. We didn't talk about Dad being wrong in this house. That was rule number 1. Emma glanced toward the door nervously. Jake, don't. He'll hear you. He's getting ready for work. And even if he wasn't. I stopped myself. They weren't ready for this conversation. Not yet. 20 minutes later, I heard Dad's BMW pull out of the driveway. His morning routine was clockwork, explosion at the family, shower, coffee, transform into David Mitchell, regional sales director and beloved community member. I found Mom in the laundry room, mechanically sorting clothes that were already sorted. Mom. She startled, dropping a sock. Oh. Jake, honey, I didn't know you were home. How was the drive? Are you hungry? I can make pancakes. Mom, stop. I closed the door behind me. We need to talk. Her face went carefully neutral. If this is about this morning, your father was just stressed. The Peterson account has been giving him trouble, and you know how he gets when work is. He called Marcus worthless. A waste of space. He didn't mean it. He loves you kids more than anything. He works so hard to provide for us, and sometimes the pressure just. She was folding and refolding the same shirt. He's a good man, Jake. A good father. He just has a temper sometimes. I stared at her. 18 years of this, and she still couldn't say it out loud. Still couldn't admit what we all knew. Mom, I recorded it. The shirt slipped from her fingers. I have the whole thing on my phone. Every word he said to Marcus. Every word he said to you. Her face went white. Jake, no. Delete it. Right now. Why? Because. She whispered, glancing at the door, because you don't know what he'll do if he finds out. That's when I realized Mom wasn't just defending Dad. She was terrified of him. The truth hit me like ice water. Mom knew exactly what Dad was, and she was too scared to do anything about it. What do you mean, what he'll do? I pressed, keeping my voice low. Mom, what aren't you telling me? She turned away, busying herself with the dryer settings even though it wasn't running. Nothing. We can't rock the boat right now, Jake. Things have been better lately. Much better. Better? I've been home for 20 minutes and he's already traumatized Marcus. You don't understand. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Last month, when I mentioned maybe taking the kids to my sister's for Thanksgiving, he got so angry. He said if I ever tried to take his children away from him, he'd make sure I never saw them again. He said he'd tell everyone about my medication, about the time I had to go to the hospital. My blood went cold. What time? What hospital? She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, 2 years ago. After you left for orientation week at State. I had an episode. The stress, the panic attacks were getting so bad I couldn't function. I was in the psychiatric ward for 4 days. Jesus Christ, Mom. I had no idea. Your father made sure of that. He told you and the kids I had the flu, remember? But he made it very clear that if I ever embarrassed the family again, he'd use it against me. He knows people at the courthouse from his Rotary Club connections. He said no judge would give custody to someone with my history. The laundry room felt like it was shrinking. That's not how it works. You can't lose your kids for having depression. Can't I? She finally turned to face me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my mother's eyes before, complete defeat. Jake, your father makes $127,000 a year. He's on the church board. He volunteers at the food bank. Everyone loves David Mitchell. And me? I'm a part-time dental hygienist with a psychiatric hospitalization on my record. Who do you think they believe? The recording app was still open on my phone. I stared at it, this little audio file that had seemed so powerful 20 minutes ago. But if people heard how he really talks to you guys, they'd say I drove him to it. That I was an unfit mother who couldn't even manage her own household. Mom's laugh was bitter. Your father is very smart, Jake. He spent years making sure everyone sees exactly what he wants them to see. Footsteps thundered down the stairs, Emma and Marcus heading to catch the school bus. I heard the front door slam, their voices fading as they walked down the driveway. Off to pretend everything was normal for another day. There's something else, Mom said, wrapping her arms around herself. The Hartmans next door. They put their house up for sale last week. So. Your father's been talking about how nice it would be to have more space. How maybe we should buy it, knock down the fence, expand our property. She met my eyes. That house costs $340,000, Jake. We'd have to take out a massive loan. I'd have to quit my job to manage a property that size, and then you'd be completely financially dependent on him. Completely trapped. The words hung in the air like smoke. He's already got me meeting with his loan officer friend next Tuesday. Everything's moving so fast, and I don't know how to stop it without making him suspicious. I looked down at my phone again. 23.7 megabytes of evidence that suddenly felt both incredibly important and completely useless. Mom, I said slowly, what if we had a way to make sure everyone heard who Dad really is? She was already shaking her head before I finished the sentence. Jake, no. Whatever you're thinking, no. The risk is too high. But I was already thinking about Dad's Christmas party next week. 37 people from his work, his church, his precious community groups. All of them about to learn the truth. The bus pulled away from our curb at exactly 8:47 a.m., taking Emma and Marcus to another day of pretending our family was normal. I watched from the living room window as Dad's BMW turned the corner. He always took Maple Street to avoid the school zone traffic. 12 hours until he'd be back to terrorize us again. Mom had retreated to her bedroom after our conversation, claiming she needed to rest before work. But I could hear her pacing upstairs, the same 3 steps back and forth she'd done since I was little whenever Dad's behavior got particularly bad. I sat on the couch and played back the recording through my earbuds. Even knowing what was coming, hearing Dad's voice turn from 0 to vicious in seconds made my skin crawl. The way he drew out certain words, worthless, pathetic, waste, like he was savoring them. The sound of Marcus's muffled sobs underneath it all. But it was what came through in the background that made me pause and rewind. At the 4:32 mark, right when Dad was screaming about Mom being weak like her mother, there was another sound. A gentle thud, like someone setting something down carefully. I cranked the volume. There it was again at 7:18, a soft scraping noise, barely audible under Dad's ranting about discipline and respect. It took me 3 more listens to realize what I was hearing. Mom was making breakfast during the entire explosion. Cracking eggs, buttering toast, flipping what sounded like pancakes. She'd learned to function through Dad's verbal assaults, to keep performing normal motherly duties while her husband systematically destroyed their son's self-worth 6 feet away. That detail felt more damning than all of Dad's screaming combined. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate Tyler. Dude, how's being home? Your dad's still making everyone miserable. I stared at the message. Tyler had only met Dad twice, once during move-in day, once at Parents' Weekend, but he'd picked up on something. He was super weird, Tyler had said after Parents' Weekend. Like, aggressively friendly but his eyes looked dead. Gave me serial killer vibes. If Tyler could sense it in 2 brief interactions, how many other people had noticed cracks in Dad's perfect facade? I scrolled through my contacts until I found Jessica Chen, my lab partner from chemistry who lived 3 towns over. We'd gotten close studying for midterms, and she'd mentioned her mom worked as a family court mediator. Hey, I texted her. Random question, if someone hypothetically had recordings of verbal abuse, what would that mean legally? Her response came back fast, Jesus Jake, are you okay? Is this about your family? I'd apparently been less subtle about our home situation than I thought. Just curious. Asking for a friend. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, my mom says audio evidence can be huge in custody cases, but it depends on recording laws in your state. Are you in a one-party consent state? I had no idea what that meant, but I googled it. Pennsylvania, one-party consent. Legal to record conversations as long as one participant, me, consented. Follow-up question, I typed. What about using recordings to expose someone publicly? Like posting them online or sending them to someone's employer? This time Jessica called me directly. Jake, what the hell is going on? Her voice was sharp with concern. This isn't about some random friend, is it? I walked upstairs to my bedroom and closed the door. Jess, if someone was hurting your family, not physically, but psychologically, and you had proof, what would you do? Silence. Then, how bad are we talking? Bad enough that my mom had a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized, but she's too scared to leave because she thinks she'll lose custody of my siblings. Oh shit, Jake. I could hear her moving around, probably finding somewhere private to talk. Okay, listen. My mom deals with this stuff constantly. You need to be really careful here. If your dad finds out you're collecting evidence against him, and he's as controlling as you're making him sound, he could make things exponentially worse for your family. So I should just do nothing. Let him keep torturing my 10-year-old brother. No, but you need a real plan. Not just revenge. She paused. My mom's working late tonight, but she gets home around 10. Want me to ask her about this? Hypothetically. I looked at my phone, at the recording that represented 17 minutes and 34 seconds of proof that David Mitchell, pillar of the community, was a monster. Yeah, I said. Ask her. After we hung up, I found myself thinking about the Christmas party again. Dad had been planning it for weeks, talking endlessly about the guest list, his boss Richard Kowalski, Pastor Williams from St. Matthew's, the mayor's wife who served with him on the Parks Commission board. 37 people who believed Dad was a devoted family man. What would happen if they all heard otherwise? I spent the rest of the morning going through Dad's home office while he was at work. He kept it locked, but I'd figured out years ago that his secure filing cabinet used the same combination as his gym locker, Emma's birthday backwards. What I found made my stomach turn. There were printouts of Mom's medical records from her hospitalization, records he shouldn't have had access to. Screenshots of her sister's Facebook posts from last year complaining about family drama. A folder labeled Legal Considerations, containing research about parental alienation syndrome and custody laws. He'd even printed out articles about how to document a spouse's mental instability for divorce proceedings. But the worst part was a handwritten list titled Character References, Linda. Underneath, he'd written names of people who might testify against Mom, her former boss who'd fired her for missing too many days during her depression, a neighbor who'd complained about Marcus and Emma being too loud in the backyard, even Mom's own doctor, with a note about how her anxiety medication could be portrayed as dependency issues. Dad hadn't just threatened Mom about custody. He'd been building a case against her for years. My hands were shaking as I photographed everything with my phone. This wasn't just emotional abuse, this was calculated, systematic preparation for total control. At the bottom of the stack was a business card for Davidson and Associates, Family Law. Someone had written, consultation scheduled for December 28th, in Dad's precise handwriting. December 28th. 8 days after Christmas. I checked Dad's desk calendar. Sure enough, there it was, DNA, 2 p.m., written in blue ink. While the rest of us were still digesting Christmas dinner and opening presents, Dad was planning to file for divorce and sole custody. My phone rang, making me jump. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. My mom wants to talk to you, she said without preamble. Tonight, 7 o'clock. She's coming home early. What did you tell her? The truth. That someone I care about is in a fucked up situation and needs help. I could hear voices in the background, she was between classes. Jake, she sounded really concerned when I described what you told me. Like, more concerned than I expected. What do you mean? She asked a lot of specific questions about your dad's job, his community involvement, whether he'd ever been physically violent. When I mentioned the medical records thing, she went quiet for like 30 seconds. Then she said controlling men with good public reputations are some of the most dangerous abusers because they're so calculated about it. I thought about the folder in Dad's filing cabinet, his meticulous planning for destroying Mom's life. She's not wrong. There's something else. My mom asked if your family has anywhere safe to go. Like, somewhere your dad couldn't find you if things went bad. Do you? The question hit me like a brick. Mom's sister lived in Ohio, but Dad knew about her. Mom's parents were both dead. We didn't have family money or secret savings accounts. If Dad wanted to find us, he could. I don't think so, I admitted. Okay. We'll figure something out. Jessica's voice was determinedly optimistic. 7 o'clock tonight. My mom's going to help, I promise. After she hung up, I sat in Dad's chair, surrounded by evidence of his careful, methodical cruelty. The Christmas party was still 5 days away, but suddenly that felt like a lifetime. What if Dad moved faster than I expected? What if he'd already started legal proceedings? I pulled up the recording on my phone and played it again, listening to Marcus cry while Dad called him worthless. 8 days until Dad's lawyer appointment. 5 days until I could expose him to his precious community. The question was, would that be soon enough? At 3:47 p.m., I was lying on my bed pretending to nap when Emma and Marcus got home from school. Their voices drifted up from the kitchen, Emma helping Marcus with math homework, both of them speaking in the hushed tones we all used when Dad wasn't home. Like we were afraid to disturb the temporary peace. I was almost asleep when I heard Emma say, "Do you think Jake heard this morning?" "I hope not," Marcus whispered back. He looked sad when he saw me crying. Maybe he can help somehow. He's bigger now. And he's in college. Emma, don't. Marcus's voice carried that old, familiar fear. You know what happened to Jake before he left? I sat up. What happened to me before I left? That wasn't Jake's fault, Emma said fiercely. Dad was being crazy. But Jake got in trouble for fighting back. Dad said if it happened again, he'd send Jake away for good. To military school or something. My stomach dropped. I remembered that fight, the last real blowout before I left for college. Dad had been screaming at Mom about her prescription drug problem, she took anxiety medication, and I'd finally snapped and told him to shut up. He'd gotten in my face, and I'd pushed him back. Not hard, just enough to make him stumble. But I'd forgotten about his threats afterward. The research he'd done on military academies for troubled young men. The way he'd made it crystal clear that my college fund could disappear as easily as it had appeared. I just wish someone would make him stop, Emma said quietly. Maybe when we're older. When we can leave like Jake did. 8 years. That's how long Marcus would have to endure this. Emma had 6 more years. I couldn't wait for Dad's Christmas party. Not with his lawyer appointment looming, not with him escalating toward whatever his endgame was with Mom. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Dr. Patricia Chin, Jessica's mother. I understand you need to speak with me urgently. Can you come to my office this evening? 142, Maple Street, Suite 4. Come alone and tell no one where you're going. I googled the address. A small professional building 20 minutes away, right in the corridor between our town and Jessica's. Dr. Chen had offices for her family mediation practice. I texted back, I'll be there at 7 p.m. Good. Bring any documentation you have, but leave your phone in your car before entering the building. We'll talk about why when you arrive. That last part sent a chill through me. Why would I need to leave my phone in the car? At 4:15, I heard Dad's BMW in the driveway. Right on schedule, he always came home early on Wednesdays to spend quality time with the family before his Rotary Club meeting at 6:30. I crept to my bedroom door and listened. How was everyone's day? Dad's voice was warm, cheerful. The perfect father voice he used when he wanted something or when he was feeling magnanimous. Good. Emma replied, but I could hear the forced brightness. Marcus got an A on his spelling test. That's wonderful. See what happens when we focus on doing our best. There was movement downstairs, probably Dad ruffling Marcus's hair or giving him an awkward side hug. I'm proud of you, son. Much better than this morning's carelessness. The casual reference to this morning's abuse, reframed as a learning opportunity, made me nauseous. Where's your mother? Upstairs resting, Emma said. She has a headache. Dad's tone shifted slightly. Well, I suppose she's had a stressful day. Sometimes mommies need extra rest when they're not feeling well. The implication was clear. Mom's headache was really her mental health issues acting up again. More evidence for his carefully constructed narrative about her instability. I'll go check on her in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk to you two about Christmas plans. I heard Dad settling into his favorite kitchen chair, the one that gave him a clear view of everyone while keeping his back to the wall. His command position, as he jokingly called it once, though none of us had found it funny. So, Dad continued, his voice taking on that particular tone that meant he was about to make an announcement disguised as a family discussion. I've been thinking about our Christmas traditions. How maybe it's time to make some changes. My blood went cold. Changes during the holidays usually meant Dad consolidating more control. What kind of changes? Emma asked carefully. Well, your Aunt Susan called yesterday asking about Christmas dinner plans. Apparently she's expecting us to drive out to Ohio again like last year. Dad's chuckle had an edge to it. But I was thinking, wouldn't it be nicer to stay home? Start our own traditions. We have that beautiful dining room that never gets used. I pressed my ear closer to the door. Aunt Susan's house had been our Christmas destination for 3 years running. More importantly, it was the one place where Mom seemed to relax, where Dad had to moderate his behavior around extended family. But we always go to Aunt Susan's, Marcus said, confusion clear in his voice. She's making her special cookies. I know, buddy, but driving 4 hours each way is a lot of stress for Mommy. And with her headaches getting worse. Dad's voice dropped to that concerned husband register he used when building his narrative. I think a quiet Christmas at home would be better for everyone. More intimate. More meaningful. Footsteps crossed the kitchen, probably Dad moving to the coffee maker. He always needed caffeine before Rotary meetings. Plus, he continued, and I could hear the satisfaction creeping in, I've invited the Kowalskis to join us for Christmas dinner. Richard was so pleased when I offered. Apparently his wife's been feeling isolated since their daughter moved to Seattle. Emma's voice was small, so we're not seeing Aunt Susan at all. Oh, we'll see her soon. Maybe Easter. But Christmas should be about our immediate family unit, don't you think? I wanted to scream. Richard Kowalski was Dad's boss, the VP of sales at Morrison Industries. Having him for Christmas dinner wasn't about hospitality, it was about impressing the man who controlled Dad's career advancement. But it also meant Mom would be trapped performing perfect wife and mother for hours while Dad played the devoted patriarch. What about Uncle Mike? Marcus asked. He said he might visit during break. The temperature in Dad's voice dropped 10 degrees. Uncle Mike has his own family to worry about. Besides, I think we've seen enough of your mother's family lately. Sometimes too much outside influence can be disruptive to family harmony. There it was. Dad was systematically cutting Mom off from her support system, one holiday at a time. Aunt Susan had been Mom's lifeline during the worst periods of Dad's behavior. Uncle Mike was the one person in Mom's family who'd never bought Dad's charming act completely. I heard Mom's bedroom door open upstairs, followed by her soft footsteps on the stairs. There's my beautiful wife, Dad said, his voice instantly warming. Feeling better, honey? A little. Mom's voice was carefully neutral. I heard you talking about Christmas plans. Just discussing how nice it'll be to stay home this year. The kids are excited about starting new traditions, aren't you? Neither Emma nor Marcus answered immediately. In Dad's world, silence counted as agreement. David, I already told Susan we'd be there, Mom said quietly. She's planned the whole menu around us coming. And Mike is driving in from Pittsburgh specifically to Linda. Just her name, but the warning in Dad's tone was unmistakable. We've discussed this. The stress of travel isn't good for you right now. I'm fine to travel. The drive is actually relaxing, and the kids love seeing their cousins. The kids love being home too. Don't you think they deserve a calm, peaceful Christmas instead of being dragged around to accommodate other people's expectations? I recognized the trap Dad was setting. Any argument Mom made would be twisted into evidence that she was prioritizing others over her own children's well-being. My phone vibrated with another text from Dr. Chen, change of plans. Can you meet at 6 p.m. instead? Something urgent has come up regarding your situation. It was already 4:47. I needed to leave soon, but Dad's Rotary meeting didn't start until 6:30. If I left now, he'd want to know where I was going. If I waited until he left, I'd be late for my appointment with the one person who might actually help us. Downstairs, Mom's voice was getting smaller. I suppose if you think it's best. I do think it's best. For all of us. Dad's footsteps moved toward the stairs. I'm going to shower before Rotary. Why don't you start thinking about menu planning for Christmas? Something that'll impress Richard and Margaret. This could be really important for my promotion prospects. As his footsteps climbed toward the second floor, I made a decision that would change everything. I grabbed the printed photos of Dad's secret files, made sure the audio recording was backed up to my cloud storage, and texted Dr. Chen, leaving now. See you at 6. Time to find out exactly how dangerous my father really was. I slipped out through the basement door while Dad was in the shower, his off-key humming of Silent Night echoing through the bathroom pipes. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dr. Chen's office building was a converted Victorian house on the edge of downtown, wedged between an insurance agency and a massage therapist. I left my phone in the glove compartment as instructed and climbed the narrow stairs to Suite 4, my printed evidence tucked inside my jacket. Patricia Chen was nothing like I'd expected. Maybe 50, wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans, with the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd heard every terrible story humanity had to offer. Her office was small but warm, filled with plants and soft lighting that felt deliberately non-threatening. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Jessica told me this couldn't wait. I handed her the photos of Dad's legal research, his documentation against Mom, the business card for Davidson and Associates. She studied each page in silence, her expression growing grimmer. Your father has an appointment with this law firm in 8 days. December 28th, Mom doesn't know. Dr. Chen set down the papers and leaned back. Jake, I need you to understand something. What you've shown me suggests your father isn't just emotionally abusive, he's conducting a premeditated campaign to destroy your mother's credibility and isolate her from any support system. That's what I thought, but... Let me finish. Her voice was gentle but firm. Men like your father are extremely dangerous when they feel their control slipping. The fact that you're home from college, asking questions, potentially disrupting his narrative, that could trigger an escalation. My mouth went dry. What kind of escalation? False allegations. Emergency custody motions. He could claim your mother is having another breakdown, that she's a danger to the children. With his documentation and community standing, he could have Emma and Marcus removed from the house within 48 hours. The room felt like it was tilting. But that's not legal, right? He can't just. He can if he convinces a judge your mother is unstable. And from what I see here, he's been laying groundwork for exactly that scenario. Dr. Chen tapped the medical records. These shouldn't exist. The fact that he obtained them suggests he has connections in the hospital system, probably through his Rotary Club or church network. I thought about Dad's Christmas party guest list. The mayor's wife. 3 city council members. A retired judge who served on the hospital board. There's more, I said, and told her about the audio recording. Her eyes widened. You have 17 minutes of him verbally abusing your family. And Emma and Marcus don't know I recorded it. Mom knows, but she's terrified about what he'll do if he finds out. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring out her window at the darkening street. Jake, that recording could be incredibly powerful evidence. But using it wrong could backfire catastrophically. What do you mean? If you release it publicly, post it online, play it at his Christmas party, he'll claim it was taken out of context. That your mother coached the children to provoke him while you recorded. He'll spin it as evidence of a conspiracy against him. My heart sank. So it's useless. Not useless. But it needs to be presented properly, in the right legal context, with corroborating evidence. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. What we need is a strategic intervention. Something that protects your family while building a legitimate case. Like what? Dr. Chen looked up from her notes. How would you feel about wearing a wire to his Christmas party? The question hit me like a physical blow. A wire? Like FBI stuff? Not FBI. But I have contacts in the domestic violence advocacy community. People who've dealt with men like your father before. She set down her pen. The key is getting him to reveal his true nature in front of witnesses who can testify later. People from his own social circle who can't be dismissed as having ulterior motives. You want me to provoke him? In front of 37 people. I want you to give him enough rope to hang himself. Men like your father have enormous egos. When challenged publicly, especially by someone they see as beneath them, they often drop their masks completely. I thought about Dad's explosion that morning. How quickly he'd gone from zero to cruel. How he'd looked standing over Marcus, savoring every tear. What if it goes wrong? What if he just kicks me out, and I can't help Emma and Marcus anymore? That's the risk, Dr. Chen admitted. But Jake, your father is moving towards something much worse than what's happening now. That legal appointment isn't about divorce, it's about total control. If we don't act soon, your mother might lose her children permanently. Through the window, I could see Christmas lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. Somewhere across town, Dad was putting on his Rotary Club face, preparing to spend 2 hours being the charming community leader everyone believed him to be. If I do this, I said slowly, what happens next? Dr. Chen smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Next, we make sure your father's reputation matches his reality. The wire was smaller than I'd expected, barely the size of a shirt button, with a thin cord that ran down to a recording device clipped inside my belt. Dr. Chen's contact, a woman named Sarah who worked with the county's domestic violence unit, had met us at 8:30 p.m. in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. The device has a 6-hour battery life, Sarah explained, adjusting the wire under my sweater. It'll pick up conversations within a 15-foot radius, even with background music or party noise. My hands were shaking as she taped the microphone to my chest. What if he finds it? He won't, unless he's patting you down. Sarah's smile was grim. And if your father is doing random searches at his Christmas party, we'll have bigger problems. Dr. Chen handed me a small card with a phone number written in blue ink. If things go sideways, I mean really sideways, call this number and say, Christmas emergency. Someone will be at your house within 10 minutes. I stared at the card. Who? People who help families disappear when necessary. The weight of that settled over me like a lead blanket. We weren't just talking about embarrassing Dad anymore. We were talking about potentially destroying our entire life as we knew it. Jake, Dr. Chen said quietly, you can still back out. This is an enormous risk, and you're 19 years old. No one would blame you for. No. I tucked the card into my wallet. He's got a lawyer appointment in 6 days. If I don't do this now, when will I get another chance? Sarah packed up her equipment case. Remember, your job isn't to confront him directly. Just create opportunities for him to show his real personality. Ask about his work stress. Bring up your mom's health issues. Let him volunteer information about his concerns regarding family stability. And if he starts getting violent, then you leave immediately. Don't be a hero. Dr. Chen's voice was firm. The recording will be useless if you get hurt making it. I drove home in silence, hyper-aware of the wire against my chest. Dad's BMW was already in the garage, Rotary had ended at 8 p.m., and he'd probably spent the last hour in his office, reviewing notes for tomorrow's client meetings. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. I found Mom loading the dishwasher with mechanical precision, her movements careful and quiet. She looked up when I entered, and I saw her eyes automatically check the clock, 9:47 p.m. Where were you? Her voice carried that familiar edge of worry. In our house, unexplained absences meant potential complications. Just driving around. Needed to clear my head. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a Coke, trying to act normal. How was Dad's meeting? Fine. Good. She closed the dishwasher and started wiping down the already clean counter. He came home in a good mood. Richard Kowalski apparently mentioned something about expanding the regional sales territory. That's great. I popped open the soda, and the sound seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet kitchen. Mom, about Christmas dinner with the Kowalskis, are you okay with that? Her hand stilled on the counter. What do you mean? I just remember how much fun we used to have at Aunt Susan's. Emma and Marcus love playing with their cousins. Sometimes change is good, she said automatically, but I caught the tightness around her eyes. Your father thinks. What I think, came Dad's voice from the doorway, is that my family should support decisions that benefit everyone. I turned, forcing a smile. Dad stood in the kitchen entrance wearing his post-Rotary clothes, khakis and a golf shirt that said Morrison Industries Regional Sales Leader. His hair was perfectly styled, his smile warm and paternal. The wire felt like it was burning against my chest. Hey, Dad. How was Rotary? Excellent. We're organizing a food drive for the holidays. I volunteered to coordinate the church donations. He moved to Mom and kissed her cheek, the picture of a devoted husband. Your mother was just telling you about our Christmas plans, I hope. Yeah, sounds great. Richard Kowalski seems like a good guy. Dad's smile widened. He is. Very impressed with my quarterly numbers. In fact, he hinted that the Springfield territory might be opening up next year. That's a $15,000 salary bump, plus commission opportunities. I felt Mom tense next to me. Springfield was 2 hours away. If Dad got promoted, we'd have to move, leaving behind what little support system Mom had left. That's amazing, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Big changes ahead. The biggest, Dad agreed, and something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. His smile was the same, but his eyes had that calculating look I remembered from this morning's explosion. Sometimes a man has to make difficult decisions to protect what matters most. The recording device hummed silently against my ribs, capturing every word. Dad's cryptic comment about difficult decisions echoed in my head all night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the wire coiled carefully in my desk drawer, wondering what exactly he was planning beyond the lawyer meeting. I got my answer the next morning at 6:23 a.m., when I heard him on the phone in his office. Yes, I understand the timeline is aggressive, Dad was saying, his voice carrying that professional smoothness he used with important contacts. But my wife's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Yesterday she couldn't even handle basic Christmas planning without having an anxiety attack. I crept closer to his door, my heart hammering. No history of violence toward the children. But the emotional instability is affecting their schoolwork, their behavior. My 10-year-old son spilled cereal yesterday and broke down crying because he was so anxious about disappointing his mother. The lie was so smooth, so perfectly crafted, that for a second I almost believed it myself. Dad was rewriting yesterday morning's abuse, turning his own cruelty into evidence of Mom's failing mental health. I've documented everything, Mr. Davidson. Medical records, behavioral incidents, witness statements from concerned neighbors. I'm prepared to file for emergency custody as soon as possible after the holiday. Emergency custody. The words hit me like ice water. Dr. Chen had warned me about this, but hearing Dad actually planning it made my knees weak. Tuesday the 26th works perfectly. That gives us the Christmas weekend to let things settle, then we move fast before anyone can interfere. December 26th. Not the 28th like I'd seen on his calendar, that must have been a decoy appointment. He was moving even faster than we thought. The beauty of it is that everyone will blame the holiday stress, Dad continued. Family gatherings can be triggers for people with Linda's issues. Very believable that she'd have a breakdown trying to host Christmas dinner for my colleagues. I felt sick. He was planning to use his own Christmas party as the setup for Mom's supposed breakdown. Invite his boss and community leaders, then create a situation where Mom would look unstable in front of them all. Exactly. With Richard Kowalski as a witness to her erratic behavior, plus the medical documentation, we should have temporary custody within 48 hours. The line went quiet, then Dad's voice dropped to something almost excited. No, she won't fight it. Linda's too afraid of public scrutiny, too convinced she's actually unstable. She'll probably thank me for getting her the help she needs. My hands were clenched so tight my nails drew blood. Dad wasn't just planning to steal custody, he was counting on Mom's depression and self-doubt to make her complicit in her own destruction. One more thing, Dad said, and I heard papers rustling. My oldest son is home from college. 19, very protective of his mother. If he becomes a problem, I may need to accelerate the timeline. The conversation was wrapping up. I heard Dad's chair creak as he leaned back, probably feeling satisfied with his master plan. I scrambled back to my room just as his office door opened. Jake, he called out. You awake, son? Just getting up, I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. Good. I want to talk to you about helping your mother with Christmas preparations. She's been struggling lately, and I think she could use some extra support. I opened my door, forcing a concerned expression. Is she okay? Dad's face arranged itself into perfect paternal worry. I hope so. But between you and me, I'm concerned about her anxiety levels. The holidays can be difficult for people with her condition. Her condition. The depression, the panic attacks. Didn't you notice how she struggled yesterday with the Christmas planning? Dad stepped closer, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. I'm worried she might be having another episode. Like 2 years ago. He was doing it again, planting seeds, building his narrative. But this time, he was trying to recruit me as a witness. What can I do to help? I asked, hating every word. Dad smiled, and for the first time, I saw something genuinely predatory in his expression. Just keep an eye on her behavior. Document anything concerning. Sometimes family members are the first to notice when someone needs professional intervention. The wire in my drawer seemed to pulse with importance. Christmas was 3 days away. Time was running out. The next 2 days passed in a horrible kind of slow motion. Dad had kicked into full preparation mode for his Christmas party, transforming into the perfect host while simultaneously laying groundwork for Mom's supposed breakdown. He'd casually mentioned to 3 different neighbors that Linda had been struggling with holiday stress and asked them to keep an eye out during the party on December 23rd. Meanwhile, I watched him orchestrate a dozen small cruelties designed to push Mom toward an actual anxiety attack. He changed the dinner menu without telling her, then expressed concern when she seemed flustered about the grocery list. He invited 2 additional couples at the last minute, then suggested Mom might be overwhelmed by the extra workload. Every interaction was calculated to make her doubt herself while making him look like a caring, worried husband. The most chilling part was how well it was working. By December 22nd, Mom was barely sleeping, second-guessing every decision, apologizing constantly for things that weren't her fault. I caught her crying over the appetizer preparations, convinced she was ruining Christmas for everyone. That evening, I called Dr. Chen from the parking lot of a CVS 2 towns over. He moved up the custody filing to December 26th, I told her. And he's setting Mom up to have a breakdown at tomorrow's party. In front of his boss and community leaders, Dr. Chen said grimly. Witnesses will testify that they saw her instability firsthand. Dr. Chen, what if we can't stop this? What if the recording isn't enough? She was quiet for a moment. Jake, there's something I haven't told you. Sarah ran a background check on your father through her domestic violence contacts. This isn't his first time. My blood went cold. What do you mean? His first wife, before your mother. Rebecca Davidson, maiden name Patterson. Divorced in 1995, lost custody of their daughter in what the court records describe as concerning circumstances involving documented mental health issues. The words hit me like a physical blow. Dad was married before. For 3 years. Rebecca was a nurse, well-respected in her community. But by the end of the marriage, she'd been hospitalized twice for what were documented as stress-induced breakdowns. Your father got full custody of their daughter, who would be about 30 now. I gripped the phone tighter. Where is she? The daughter? We don't know. The trail goes cold after 1998. But Jake, the pattern is identical. Professional woman with a good reputation, systematic isolation, medical documentation of mental health issues, then a swift custody grab. So he's done this before. Successfully. Which means he knows exactly how to do it again. Dr. Chen's voice was urgent. Tomorrow's party isn't just about embarrassing your mother, it's the final piece of his legal strategy. You need to be very careful with that recording device. After we hung up, I sat in a CVS parking lot watching Christmas shoppers hurry through the cold. Normal families buying last-minute gifts, probably complaining about traffic or store crowds. Problems that seemed impossibly trivial compared to what my family was facing. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom's locked in the bathroom crying. Dad says she's having holiday anxiety, but she won't come out. Can you come home? I started the car, my mind racing. Tomorrow night, 37 people would gather in our dining room to celebrate Christmas. They'd eat Mom's carefully prepared food, compliment Dad on his beautiful family, and witness what they'd be told was a woman having a mental breakdown. Unless I could make them see what was really happening. The recording device felt heavier in my pocket as I drove home through the December darkness, Christmas lights blurring past my window like fallen stars. I found Mom in the kitchen at midnight, methodically polishing silver that was already spotless. Her hands were shaking as she worked, and I could see the red rims around her eyes from crying. Mom, you should get some sleep. The party's not until 6 tomorrow. She didn't look up from the serving spoon in her hands. I keep thinking I'm forgetting something important. Your father invited Richard and Margaret Kowalski, plus the Hendersons, plus Pastor Williams and his wife, plus, her voice cracked. I can't remember if I bought enough wine for 14 people or 16 people or... God, what if I miscounted again? I gently took the spoon from her hands. There are 3 bottles of wine in the pantry, 2 bottles of champagne in the fridge, plus beer and soft drinks. You didn't miscount anything. But what if Richard Kowalski doesn't like the stuffed mushrooms? Your father said his promotion depends on making a good impression, and if I mess this up... Mom, stop. I turned her to face me. Richard Kowalski is a human being who eats food. The mushrooms are fine. The whole menu is fine. You're an incredible cook, and everyone knows it. She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe me. Dad's psychological warfare had done its job. Mom was so convinced of her own inadequacy that she couldn't trust her own competence. Jake, she whispered, glancing toward the stairs to make sure Dad wasn't listening, I found something in your father's desk yesterday. Papers from a law firm. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of papers? Custody evaluation forms. Information about emergency guardianship proceedings. Her hands twisted together. There was a note in his handwriting that said, after Christmas incident, Linda's instability documented by multiple witnesses. So she knew. Part of Dad's plan, anyway. What Christmas incident? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That's what scares me. He's planning something for tomorrow night, something that will make me look. She couldn't finish the sentence. The recording device was upstairs in my desk drawer, waiting for tomorrow. But suddenly tomorrow felt too late. If Mom was already this fragile, this convinced of her own inadequacy, what would happen when Dad triggered whatever incident he had planned? Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Tomorrow night, no matter what Dad says or does, no matter how you feel in the moment, you are not having a breakdown. You are not unstable. You are not failing as a mother or wife. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. If Dad starts criticizing you tomorrow, or if he claims you're not feeling well, or if he suggests you need to rest while he handles the guests, you stay in that room. You smile, you change the subject, and you remember that every person at that party has spilled food, forgotten names, and made social mistakes. But what if I actually do mess something up? What if I prove he's right about me? I grabbed her shoulders gently. Mom, Dad spilled coffee on his laptop last week and screamed at it for 5 minutes. Yesterday he couldn't remember where he parked at the grocery store and blamed the confusing layout. When Dad makes mistakes, they're just mistakes. When you make mistakes, he turns them into evidence that you're mentally ill. Do you see the difference? For the first time in days, something shifted in her expression. A tiny spark of recognition. He's been setting me up, she said quietly. 4 months. Maybe years. I took a deep breath. Mom, what would you say if I told you I had a way to prove what Dad's really like? To show people who he actually is? She searched my face, and I saw a flicker of the strong woman she used to be before Dad systematically destroyed her confidence. I'd say it's about time someone did. The kitchen clock ticked toward 12:47 a.m. In 17 hours, our lives would change forever. The morning of December 23rd started with Dad humming Joy to the World while he shaved, his voice echoing cheerfully from the bathroom. I lay in bed listening to him, the wire already taped to my chest, wondering how someone could sound so genuinely happy about destroying his family. At 8:15 a.m., he knocked on my door. Jake. I need your help moving some furniture for tonight. I found him in the living room, repositioning chairs with mathematical precision. I want to make sure everyone has a clear view of the kitchen, he explained, sliding Mom's favorite armchair toward the far wall. That way our guests can see how hard Linda's working to make everything perfect. The setup was brilliant and horrifying. He wasn't just planning to humiliate Mom, he was staging it like a theater performance, ensuring maximum visibility when she inevitably failed under pressure. Speaking of your mother, Dad continued, his voice dropping to that concerned whisper, I'm worried about her state of mind today. She was up until almost 1 a.m., obsessively cleaning things that were already clean. Very similar to her behavior before the hospitalization. I adjusted my sweater, making sure the wire wasn't visible. She seemed fine when I talked to her. That's the thing about anxiety disorders, they can mask themselves as normal behavior to untrained observers. Dad's smile was patient, patronizing. But I've learned to recognize the signs. The repetitive cleaning, the midnight kitchen sessions, the way she keeps checking and rechecking the guest list. Every word was calculated. He was already building his narrative for tonight, establishing my testimony as an untrained observer whose opinion would carry less weight than his concerned husband act. At 11:30 a.m., the first crisis erupted. Mom discovered that the specialty cheese she'd ordered from Romano's Deli had been given to another customer by mistake. She called the store in a panic, her voice shaking as she tried to explain the mix-up to a teenager who clearly didn't understand why cheese was worth crying over. Dad appeared in the kitchen doorway like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. What's wrong, sweetheart? His tone was pure solicitous concern, but I caught the satisfied glint in his eyes. The Manchego cheese isn't ready, and Romano's doesn't have any more in stock until after Christmas, Mom said, her hands fluttering helplessly. Richard Kowalski specifically mentioned loving Spanish cheeses, and now the whole appetizer board is ruined, and... Linda, breathe. Dad crossed to her, placing his hands on her shoulders in what would look like a comforting gesture to any observer. It's just cheese. Our guests will understand. You don't understand, Mom said, her voice climbing toward panic. You said this dinner was crucial for your promotion. You said everything had to be perfect for Richard and Margaret. If I can't even manage basic party planning. Sweetheart, you're catastrophizing again. Dad's voice was gentle, clinical. Remember what Dr. Peterson said about spiraling thoughts? Dr. Peterson was Mom's therapist, the one Dad had insisted she see after her hospitalization. The one whose notes would probably end up in Dad's custody filing. I watched Mom deflate, the fight going out of her as Dad's psychological conditioning kicked in. She nodded meekly, apologizing for overreacting to a problem that Dad had specifically engineered by building impossible pressure around tonight's dinner. I'll drive to 3 different stores if I have to, I said quickly. Wegmans usually has good cheese, and there's that gourmet place in Millerville. Dad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's very thoughtful, Jake, but I think your mother needs to learn to handle these situations without constant rescue efforts. It's just cheese, Dad. Not exactly crisis management. It's the principle. Dad's smile stayed perfectly in place, but his eyes went cold. Your mother relies too heavily on others to solve problems she should handle independently. It's part of her pattern of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. He was literally using psychology textbook terms to pathologize Mom's completely normal reaction to stress that he deliberately created. The recording device captured every word, every calculated manipulation disguised as loving concern. But I realized with growing dread that Dad's performance was so polished, so subtle, that even with evidence, he might convince people that he really was just a worried husband dealing with an unstable wife. At 2:47 p.m., I was loading backup cheese selections into my car when Emma found me in the garage. Jake, something's wrong with Mom, she whispered, glancing back toward the house. She's in her bedroom crying again, and Dad's on the phone telling someone she's having another episode. My blood went cold. Who's he talking to? I don't know, but he keeps saying things like, just like we discussed, and the documentation will speak for itself. Through the kitchen window, I could see Dad pacing in his office, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing emphatically. Building his case, setting up tonight's finale. The Christmas party was 3.5 hours away. Whatever Dad had planned, it was about to begin. At 4:23 p.m., I was arranging the cheese board when I heard Dad's voice from the hallway, speaking in hushed tones to someone at the front door. Thank you for coming early, Margaret. I wanted to speak with you privately before the other guests arrive. Margaret Kowalski's voice was warm but concerned. Of course, David. Richard is just parking the car. You sounded worried on the phone. My hands stilled on the crackers. Dad had called the Kowalskis before the party started. This wasn't social, it was strategic. I am worried, Dad said, his voice heavy with practiced regret. Linda's been struggling more than usual lately. The holiday stress seems to have triggered some concerning behaviors. I crept closer to the kitchen doorway, the wire picking up every word. Oh dear, Margaret murmured. Is there anything we can do to help? Just, if you notice anything unusual tonight, please don't take it personally. Linda sometimes gets overwhelmed in social situations. She might seem scattered, or emotional, or, well, I just want you to be prepared. He was priming his key witness, setting expectations so that any normal party hosting stress would look like a mental breakdown. Margaret Kowalski would spend the entire evening watching Mom through the lens of concerning behaviors, interpreting every small mistake as evidence of instability. David, we had no idea, came Richard Kowalski's voice as he entered. You should have said something sooner. Margaret and I could have offered to host instead. That's very kind, but Linda insisted on going through with tonight. She's convinced that disappointing people would be worse than, well, than whatever happens. Dad's sigh was perfectly calculated. I've learned not to argue when she gets fixated on something. Fixated. Another clinical term to pathologize Mom's completely normal desire to host a nice dinner for her husband's colleagues. Footsteps moved toward the living room, followed by the sound of coats being hung up. I heard Dad offering drinks, his voice returning to its usual charming warmth now that he'd planted the necessary seeds. I found Mom in the master bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed staring at her hands. She'd changed into her navy dress, the one Dad always said made her look appropriately professional, but her makeup was smudged from crying. The Kowalskis are here, I said gently. About 30 minutes early. I know. I heard them talking in the hallway. Her voice was hollow. David told them I'm having problems again. So she'd heard too. Mom. He's right, though, isn't he? She looked up at me with devastating defeat in her eyes. I did cry over cheese. I have been obsessing over details. Maybe I really am as unstable as he says. This was the moment I realized the true genius of Dad's manipulation. He hadn't just isolated Mom from external support, he'd convinced her to gaslight herself. Every normal human reaction to his manufactured stress became evidence in her own mind that she was mentally ill. The doorbell rang downstairs. More guests arriving. Mom, listen to me, I said, kneeling in front of her. In the next 2 hours, Dad is going to try to make you look unstable in front of his colleagues. He's going to create problems and then act concerned when you react normally to them. She shook her head. Jake, you don't understand. The legal papers I found. I know about the custody filing. December 26th, emergency hearing, Dad claiming you're an unfit mother. Her eyes widened in shock. But Mom, what if I told you I could prove what he's really doing? What if tonight, instead of Dad getting his witnesses against you, we got witnesses against him? Voices and laughter drifted up from downstairs as more guests arrived. Pastor Williams' booming greeting. The Henderson family's 3 kids running through the hallway. Mom searched my face desperately. How? I touched my chest where the wire lay hidden. Trust me for the next 2 hours. No matter what happens, no matter how upset you feel, remember that you are not the problem. Dad is. The kitchen timer chimed downstairs, the appetizers were ready. Time to give Dad exactly the kind of Christmas party he deserved. The party was in full swing by 7:15 p.m. when Dad made his first move. 37 guests filled our living room and dining area, plates balanced with Mom's perfectly prepared appetizers, wine glasses catching the soft Christmas lights. Everything looked exactly like the wholesome family gathering Dad had orchestrated. Linda, sweetheart, Dad called out from across the room, his voice carrying that particular tone I'd learned to recognize. Could you bring out more of those wonderful stuffed mushrooms? Richard here can't stop raving about them. Mom hurried toward the kitchen, and I followed casually, the wire recording everything. Dad had positioned himself perfectly, close enough to the kitchen doorway that his voice would carry to the guests, far enough that they wouldn't see his expression. Actually, Dad said, stepping into the kitchen as Mom reached for the serving tray, maybe we should slow down on the appetizers. Some people might be getting a bit overindulgent. It was a nothing comment, but I watched Mom's face crumble slightly. In her anxious state, she heard criticism. She was serving too much food, overwhelming the guests, failing as a hostess. Oh no, should I put some away? I don't want people to. Linda, you're doing it again. Dad's voice dropped to that clinical whisper, but he knew the guests in the living room could still hear him. The spiraling thoughts. Remember what Dr. Peterson said about catastrophizing? Pastor Williams appeared in the doorway, concern creasing his face. Everything all right in here? Perfect. Dad's first witness, right on cue. Just fine, Pastor, Dad said smoothly. Linda's been working so hard on tonight that she's a bit overwhelmed. You know how she gets during stressful situations. I'm not overwhelmed, Mom said quietly, but her hands were shaking as she arranged mushrooms on the tray. Sweetheart, look at your hands. You're trembling. Dad placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, the picture of a concerned husband. Maybe you should sit down for a few minutes. I can handle the hosting. This was it. The moment Dad had engineered, Mom looking unstable in front of a respected community leader, with Dad positioned as the long-suffering caregiver. I stepped forward, my voice calm and clear. Actually, Dad, maybe you should tell Pastor Williams about your real concerns. About the custody filing you scheduled for December 26th with Davidson and Associates. The kitchen went dead silent. Dad's carefully composed expression flickered for just a second, surprise, then fury, then back to concerned confusion. Jake, what are you talking about? Or maybe, I continued, pulling out my phone, Pastor Williams would like to hear how you really talk to your family when no one's around. I hit play on yesterday morning's recording, the volume loud enough to carry into the living room where conversations were starting to quiet. Dad's voice exploded from the phone speaker, you worthless little shit. Can't even pour cereal without making a goddamn mess. Pastor Williams' face went white. From the living room came the sound of conversation stopping entirely. This is exactly why these kids are so goddamn useless, because you coddle them like babies. Dad's recorded voice continued, vicious and cruel and completely unlike the charming man everyone knew. Turn that off, Dad hissed, lunging for my phone, but I stepped back. You're sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, you little moron. Sorry doesn't teach you to stop being such a clumsy waste of space. By now, guests were crowding into the kitchen doorway. Richard Kowalski's face was horrified. Margaret had her hand pressed to her mouth. The Hendersons pulled their kids closer as Dad's recorded abuse filled our Christmas-decorated home. And you. This is your fault. You let them get away with everything while I'm working 60-hour weeks to keep this family afloat. That's enough. Dad roared, his mask finally slipping completely. He grabbed for my phone again, his face twisted with the same rage I'd heard in the recording. You little bastard, how dare you? And there it was. In front of 37 witnesses, David Mitchell, pillar of the community, showed exactly who he really was. This is manipulation, he screamed, his voice echoing off the kitchen walls. Linda put him up to this. She's trying to turn my own son against me because she knows she's losing her mind. But the guests had heard the recording. They'd seen his explosion. The contrast was devastating. Richard Kowalski stepped forward, his voice cold. David, I think Margaret and I should leave. One by one, our guests filed out into the December night, leaving behind half-eaten appetizers and the wreckage of Dad's carefully constructed reputation. The custody hearing never happened. By December 28th, Dad had moved into an extended stay hotel, and Mom had filed for divorce with an attorney who specialized in abuse cases. The recording, all 17 minutes and 34 seconds, became evidence in family court. Richard Kowalski made sure Dad's promotion went to someone else. The church board asked for his resignation. And for the first time in 18 years, our house was quiet.